The construction of obelisks stems back approximately 4,000 years ago to ancient Egypt. Once Roman emperors ruled Egypt, they adopted the obelisks. By the end of the 16th century, Pope Sixtus V transformed these structures into Catholic monuments. These Egyptian-inspired structures are also found around the United States. Three of the most recognized obelisks around the world are St. Peter's in Vatican City, Mussolini's in Foro Italico, and the Washington Monument on the National Mall. The three obelisks mentioned were not designed for aesthetic pleasure, but were instead meant to strike the viewer in a way that calls to mind a sense of authority and timelessness in the creator's given vision. However, Mussolini and the Pope used the obelisk to deliberately boost the morale of their individual ideals, while the Washington Monument is a dedication to George Washington's successes.
Standing tall sits the Egyptian obelisk at St. Peter's Square. Over 3,000 years old, this monument is condensed with a deep and reverential history that spans from the ancient Egyptian city of Heliopolis to Rome today. The ancient Romans also had their share with this obelisk that started in the 1st century. They all used this needle to glorify and commemorate their beliefs. Although it was used by 3 distinct cultures and periods, the Egyptian, Roman, and Christian, this versatile monument's role of immortalizing specific subjects remained consistent. The Vatican obelisk went through a series of changes relating to its use and function. It was first constructed under the pharaoh by the name of Meneptah in 1400 BCE at Heliopolis, Egypt. Heliopolis is a Greek word for city of the sun. Generally, the people of ancient Egypt worshipped their sun god by building obelisks in commemoration of them. It also represented their everlasting life and power. One key feature found in these obelisks are the hieroglyphs, writings dedicated to the solar god and the pharaoh. These needles displayed a power over the people and instilled fear and reverence for the sun god and the pharaoh. Transitioning back to the Vatican obelisk, it was moved by Roman Emperor Caligula from Egypt to Rome in 37 BCE. When the towering obelisk arrived in Rome, it was placed at the center of Caligula's circus. This was where masses of Christians, including St. Peter and St. Paul, were martyred. The reigning power's gruesome statement was clearly made. This was for the people to recognize the emperor's authority and to believe in his capabilities rather than their god. Aforementioned, this branded the Roman people, especially the Christian community, with fear. After years of abandonment, the silent witness of the Christian persecutions were moved to the near center of the Vatican City by Pope Sixtus V. In the 1590s, the monument was moved to a Catholic church in Vatican City, close to where the obelisk stands now. This was when the Counter-Reformation, better known as the Catholic Revival, took place. This movement was a response to the Protestant Reformation that was happening at the same time. Some interpreters say that the placement of the obelisk today was to solidify and signify the power of the popes and the religion as a whole. Today, the pagan obelisk sits at the forefront of St. Peter's Basilica. This is one of the most influential and powerful acts performed in regards to the histories of this monolithic stone piece. The original obelisk topper was then replaced with a bronze cross, the symbol of Christ. The hieroglyphs were scraped off and replaced with exorcist formulas on the east and west sides of the needle. On the north and south sides are inscriptions of Pope Sixtus V in honor of the moving of the obelisk. His ideals play a key role in the theological symbolism of St. Peter's Square. The choice of the location served as a religious statement from the Pope. Drawing conclusions for the Pope's motivations, he needed to show the people, including the non-Catholics, that the power and authority of God, the saints, and himself will always triumph paganism as well as Protestantism. This always shows Christ's power to consecrate an object with sacrilegious history. Much like the Vatican obelisk, Mussolini's needle was also used to instill authority.
Skip forward in time and you'll see how Mussolini used obelisks to further his fascist plan with influences from Egyptian history and Roman strategy. Comparing with Augustan propaganda, Mussolini also uses art to impress his believers and fuel his ambition of converting Italy into a reigning authority. Another strategy for the construction of the obelisk was growing conflict with Ethiopia over bordering issues. The obelisk was used as propaganda to glorify Mussolini with a godlike view, by taking the structure's meaning from Egyptian custom, a tactic performed many times by the Romans. Mussolini's obelisk began construction in 1928 before the Second Italo-Ethiopian War started, but completed after the war ended. As Romans would take obelisks built in Egypt back to Italy, Luce decided to follow the same strategy of showing victory over the country. Mussolini's interest of the structure also appealed to him because of the meaning the obelisk held in Egyptian customs, as they were used to glorify the pharaohs and represent their divine power. Mussolini wanted to convey his movement going forward and did so by creating a modernized version of an obelisk. Mussolini's desired modernization of Italy is reflected in the monument by its minimalistic design. It followed the fascist architectural style, a style composed of simplicity with little decoration and great symmetry. This is shown in the minimalism of the building blocks and absence of decoration. An inscription reading Mussolini DVX is seen written down the side of the monument and shows his use of blatant propaganda. The DVX on the side of the stone stands for Duce, or leader, as Mussolini wants to be known as. There is also a very simple fasces adjacent to DVX, as the sign for fascism was his main focus. With Mussolini's fascination in Augustus' rule, he took many steps to follow his leadership style, including manipulation through art and propaganda. He wanted his dictatorship clearly proclaimed and used propaganda to show everyone that Italy is on a better path with him leading them. He built his new city next to Rome to show the clear connection of using the city's strong ancient origins in relation with his to come. The significant placement of the obelisk makes it visible when people go to the Foro Italico, as it's seen by everyone on the road. The monument also stands in front of Piazzale dell'Emporo, another place taking inspiration from ancient times with included fascist influences. Each block in the mosaic piazza has a personal message about how he is a great leader in the future of Italy. Mussolini's influence of ancient times allows him to show his respect of the customs that built the city and shows his new fascist direction. Mussolini wanted to be remembered as godly, and he used Italy's resilient history and their schemes to accomplish this goal.
Mussolini's obelisk was meant to display his political motivations, and St. Peter's obelisk illustrated Catholic ideologies, but both achieved these representations through an assertion of power. By mirroring the Roman emperor's tendencies, Mussolini was able to relate to Rome's past, but also convey dominance over these past emperors and Egypt by engraving a translation meaning Mussolini, the leader, that covers the entire side of the obelisk. Similarly, Sixtus V related to this ancient background, but carried his message by modifying the obelisk's initial meaning. By removing the pagan elements, the Pope was able to establish an authority over the monument. Standing in the heart of Catholicism, Vatican City, St. Peter's obelisk was meant to serve as a commemoration to those that have dedicated their lives to the Catholic movement. This would have led viewers to identify that they should strive to reach this level of dedication to the Trinity. While being overwhelmed by the obelisk's presence, non-supporters of Catholicism cannot deny the powerful existence of Catholicism and the Church. Unlike the Church's proclamation that there is one God above all, Mussolini's goal was to claim the godlike image that the Egyptian leaders had. As a fascist ruler, the goal is ultimate authoritarianism, and Mussolini had to use these propaganda techniques to instill a like-mindedness in the people. The structure of any obelisk is essentially overpowering and allowed Mussolini to make an unavoidable statement. His inscription on the monument, its size, and historical context is a constant reminder of his power to those that rebel, but also a reiteration of his successes to his supporters. Both of the obelisks, being located in the heart of their movements, makes their presence unavoidable, and their history would have resonated with both supporters and enemies. Both obelisks claim authority in order to support their given arguments. St. Peter's and Mussolini's obelisk's long and narrow structure reaches to the sky and symbolizes a desired perpetuation of the ideas of Pope Sixtus V and Mussolini. About 100 years before Mussolini's adoption of the obelisk, a desire to commemorate George Washington's successes led his supporters to construct the Washington Monument. Standing 554 feet, 7 inches, it was the tallest standing structure in the world when completed in 1884. Private construction of the monument began in 1848 and was halted in 1854. Lack of funding, political issues with the Know-Nothing Party, and interruption of the Civil War made the completion of the Washington Monument a difficult process. However, in 1876, Congress assumed responsibility of completing the monument. The 22-year gap between both constructions is why the bottom stones of the obelisk are a different color than the upper stones. The monument's unavoidable presence is meant to remind everyone of the accomplishments of the most indispensable founding father. By relating back to ancient Egypt, the obelisk is meant to lead viewers to remember the timelessness of George Washington's legacy. The obelisk can be seen from each monument on the National Mall, which reiterates the unification that Washington symbolized following the American Revolution. The huge structure reaches to the sky and is not shadowed by anything around it, which calls to mind the never-ending legacy of Washington. Obelisks are not necessarily meant to be works of art, but are meant to pose a domineering and unavoidable presence. St. Peter's Obelisk, the Washington Monument, and Mussolini's Obelisk are all unavoidable monuments that are found in the heart of their movements. All of these structures reach to the sky, and this alludes to the desire for a never-ending legacy of their creator and or creator's ideas. Each obelisk was also created in search of communicating similar messages amongst each party. Mussolini asserted dominance over Rome and Egypt in order to communicate the idea that his legacy and movement should be forever enduring. The Pope assertively discredited polytheism and reiterated his desire for a permanent presence of the Catholic Church. The Washington Monument is meant to make sure that the legacy of Washington never dies and cannot stand in the shadow of other leaders. The overarching themes of all three messages is dominance and longevity. The main difference in the construction of the three obelisks is that Washington had no part in the construction of the monument. Both Mussolini and the Pope were directly leading the construction of their obelisks and attempting to promote their individual ideas. People felt so strongly for a need to commemorate Washington's legacy that they took on the task of creating the expensive structure. St. Peter's Obelisk's history is the most complex and relates more strongly to Egypt, but all three structures are Egyptian-influenced. The obelisks are intended to unite supporters and discredit non-supporters by ensuring strength in their messages and reiterating a desire for their creators' ideas to live forever.